Asen Carter, a 35-year-old architect with a knack for seeing the world in clean lines and bold structures, had always trusted his gut. Moving to Seattle for a new job at a prestigious firm felt like a fresh chapter. The city's misty skyline and vibrant coffee culture suited him, and he was eager to build a life here with his wife, Emily. At the office, he quickly found his rhythm, sketching designs and charming clients with his easy confidence. But it was his connection with Michael Reed, a fellow architect, that truly grounded him in this new place. From a first handshake, Jason and Michael clicked. Both in their mid-30s, they shared a passion for jazz. Miles Davis and John Coltrane were their go-to background tracks during late-night work sessions. They'd argue over the best NBA plays, with Jason rooting for the Lakers and Michael swearing by the Celtics. Even their taste in tech gadgets aligned, from sleek smartwatches to the latest noise-canceling headphones. Over coffee breaks, they swapped stories about hiking trails in the Pacific Northwest and laughed over shared disdain for overrated sci-fi reboots. Their colleagues noticed, joking they were work soulmates who could finish each other's sentences. Their bond soon spilled beyond the office. After a long week, they'd hit a local brewery, clinking glasses of craft IPA while debating who'd win in a hypothetical pickup game. Emily, Jason's wife of 5 years, was thrilled to see him so energized. A graphic designer with a warm laugh and a knack for hosting, she loved the idea of new friends to shake up their routine. "You and Michael should come over for dinner," she suggested one evening, already planning a menu of roasted salmon and her famous lemon tart. Jason grinned, loving her enthusiasm. "Let's make it a double date." Michael's wife, Sarah, sounds like she'd fit right in. The dinner was set for a rainy Saturday night. Emily spent the day prepping, humming along to Ella Fitzgerald as she arranged the table with candles and fresh herbs. Jason, in his favorite navy button-down, couldn't help but admire her. "You're making us look like we've got our lives together," he teased, stealing a kiss. She laughed, swatting him away. "Just wait till you taste the tart. It's a game changer." When the doorbell rang at 7 p.m., Jason opened it with a wide smile. Michael stood there, his easy grin as familiar as ever, holding a bottle of Pinot Noir. Beside him was Sarah, a petite woman with sharp wit and a warm handshake. "Thanks for having us," she said, handing over the wine. But as Emily stepped forward to greet them, something shifted. For a split second, her face froze, her eyes locking on Michael. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Her smile flickered, then returned, but it was forced, like a mask snapped into place. She recovered quickly, welcoming them with a hug, but Jason caught it, a fleeting look of shock, maybe fear in her eyes. He brushed it off, chalking it up to nerves. Emily was a perfectionist. Maybe she was just stressed about the evening. The four sat down, and the conversation flowed as smoothly as the wine. Michael was his usual charismatic self, recounting a hilarious story about a client who'd insisted on a neon green office design. Sarah chimed in, her dry humor sparking laughter as she described their disastrous attempt at kayaking. Emily seemed to relax, asking Sarah about her work as a pediatric nurse and sharing her own stories of designing logos for quirky startups. Jason watched her closely, trying to read her. Was that initial reaction just his imagination? She was laughing now, pouring more wine, but something fell off, like a note played slightly out of tune. As the night wound down, Michael and Sarah thanked them profusely, promising a return invite. "This was perfect," Michael said, clapping Jason on the shoulder. "You two are stuck with us now." Emily smiled, but Jason noticed her hands fidgeting with her napkin, a nervous habit she rarely showed. After they left, Jason helped clear the plates, the clink of dishes filling the quiet. Unable to shake the feeling, he turned to her. "Hey, everything okay? You seemed off when they arrived." Emily paused, her hands still in the sink. She let out a light laugh, the kind that sounded rehearsed. "Oh, it was nothing. Just a weird dizzy spell. Probably stood up too fast." She turned, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Jason nodded, wanting to believe her, but her words felt thin, like a page torn from a book he couldn't read. He let it go, not wanting to spoil the night. After all, the dinner had been a success, and Michael and Sarah were the kind of friends they'd hoped for. But as he lay in bed, Emily's hesitant expression replayed in his mind, a tiny crack in the foundation of their perfect evening. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of new routines. Jason and Michael became inseparable at work, collaborating on a high-profile project for a tech startup. Outside the office, the two couples grew closer. They cheered at a Mariners game, shared a picnic at Golden Gardens Park, and even planned a weekend hike in the Cascades. Emily seemed to embrace it, laughing at Sarah's jokes and swapping recipes. But Jason couldn't fully shake that nagging feeling. Every so often, he'd catch Emily staring into space, her brow furrowed, or notice her go quiet when Michael spoke. It was subtle, easy to dismiss, but it lingered like a shadow. One morning, Emily mentioned she had a doctor's appointment before work. "Just a checkup," she said, grabbing her keys. Jason, distracted by a looming deadline, wished her luck and headed to the office. When he arrived, he noticed Michael's desk was empty. "Where's Mike?" he asked a colleague. "Oh, he's out for a medical thing." "Back later," came the reply. Jason froze. Both Emily and Michael, gone for appointments at the same time? It could be a coincidence, but that crack in the foundation widened, letting doubts seep in. Jason sat at his desk, the hum of the office fading into a dull roar as his mind churned. The coincidence of Emily and Michael both having medical appointments at the same time gnawed at him. He tried to focus on the blueprint spread before him, but the lines blurred, his thoughts circling back to that moment at the dinner party. Emily's frozen expression when she saw Michael. Was it really just dizziness, as she claimed? Or was there something more, something she wasn't telling him? He shook his head, trying to dismiss the suspicion. He trusted Emily. She'd always been open with him, her warm hazel eyes hiding nothing. But doubt, once planted, had a way of taking root. The Seattle rain tapped against the office windows, a steady rhythm that matched the unease building in Jason's chest. He glanced at Michael's empty desk again. It wasn't just the appointment. It was the little things. Emily's hesitation when Michael's name came up, the way she'd changed the subject when Jason mentioned their new friends. He'd always prided himself on reading people, but now he wondered if he'd missed something right in front of him. He pulled out his phone, tempted to text Emily. "Oh, cool. I was in Northeast, near Alberta. Small world, huh?" He took a quick sip of his coffee, his eyes avoiding Jason's. Jason's pulse quickened. Emily had grown up in Northeast Portland, too. She told him stories about riding her bike down Alberta Street, grabbing ice cream at Salt and Straw. He pressed further, casually mentioning a high school Emily had attended, Lincoln High. Michael's reaction was subtle, a slight stiffening of his shoulders, a too-quick nod. "Yeah, I know it. Good school," he said, then pivoted to a work topic. Jason didn't push, but his mind raced. Why hadn't Michael mentioned this before? And why hadn't Emily ever brought it up? They'd both lived in the same neighborhood, gone to nearby schools. The odds of them never meeting felt slim. Back home, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing a piece of the puzzle. He watched Emily as she cooked dinner, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. She seemed normal, chatting about a new project at work, but there was a carefulness to her words, like she was choosing them deliberately. "Hey," he said, leaning against the counter, "did you ever run into Michael back in Portland? He said he grew up near Alberta, same as you." Emily's knife paused mid-chop, her shoulders tensing. "Oh, I don't know," she said, her voice a touch too light. "Portland's big. Lots of people around." She resumed chopping, but her movements were faster, less steady. That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He lay beside Emily, her soft breathing filling the dark, and stared at the ceiling. His mind replayed every moment. The dinner, the appointments, Michael's evasive answers, Emily's guarded responses. He didn't want to believe she'd hide something from him, but the pieces were starting to form a picture he couldn't ignore. He needed answers, but he wasn't ready to confront her yet. He'd always been methodical, a problem solver. He'd gather more evidence, watch for patterns. If there was a truth to uncover, he'd find it. The next morning, as Emily left for work, Jason noticed her phone on the kitchen counter. She'd forgotten it in her rush. His heart pounded as he picked it up, the screen lighting up with a notification, a text from an unknown number. "Coffee tomorrow?" Same spot. His thumb hovered over the screen. He knew her passcode. They'd never kept secrets. But opening her phone felt like crossing a line. He set it down, his hands shaking, and grabbed his keys. He'd keep watching, keep listening. The truth, whatever it was, couldn't stay hidden forever. Jason's world felt like it was tilting, each new clue pulling him deeper into a maze of doubt. The text on Emily's phone, "Coffee tomorrow?" Same spot. Burned in his memory, though he hadn't opened it. He'd set the phone back on the counter, his heart hammering, and gone to work, but the words followed him like a shadow. By the time he reached the office, Seattle's gray drizzle mirrored his mood. Michael was at his desk, typing away, his usual charisma dialed up as he joked with a colleague. Jason watched him, searching for any sign of deceit, but Michael's smile was as steady as ever. Too steady, maybe. Jason spent the morning buried in designs, but his focus was shot. His mind kept drifting to Emily's reaction at the dinner, her evasive answers about Portland, and now that cryptic text. He needed to know more, but confronting her felt like stepping off a cliff. Instead, he turned to what he did best, gathering data. Over lunch, he steered the conversation with Michael toward their teenage years, keeping his tone light. "So, you ever hang out at those old diners on Alberta?" he asked, sipping his coffee. Michael nodded, his eyes flicking to his phone. "Yeah, there's this one spot, Rosie's. Best milkshakes." "You know it." Jason's stomach tightened. Emily had mentioned Rosie's once, a nostalgic story about late-night fries with friends. "Yeah, Emily loved that place," Jason said, watching Michael's face. Michael's smile didn't waver, but his fingers tapped the table, a nervous tick. "Small world," he said, then quickly changed the subject to a client's latest demands. Jason let it go, but the coincidence felt like another brick in the wall of suspicion. Back at his desk, he opened his laptop and did something he'd never thought he'd do. He searched Emily's social media. He scrolled through her old posts, looking for any trace of Michael. Most were recent, photos of their hikes, her art projects, their wedding in Napa. But then, buried in an album from years ago, he found it, a grainy photo from high school. Emily, 17, laughing in a park, her arm around a lanky teenager with Michael's unmistakable grin. The caption read, "Summer vibes with my favorite people." Jason's breath caught. His hands hovered over the keyboard, his mind racing. Why'd she never mention this? They'd talked about past relationships, her college boyfriend, a brief fling in her 20s, but never Michael. And Michael hadn't said a word either, despite knowing Emily was from Portland. The omission felt deliberate, like a secret they'd both agreed to bury. He closed the laptop, his chest tight with a mix of anger and betrayal. He wasn't ready to confront Emily yet, but he needed answers. That evening, he waited until she was in the shower, her phone left on the nightstand. Guilt gnawed at him, but he typed in her passcode and opened her messages. The unknown number was there, a short thread. "Missed you today. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at Bean and Brew." The reply from Emily, "Can't wait." His heart sank. Bean and Brew was a coffee shop near her office, one she'd mentioned loving. He locked the phone, his hands trembling. The next morning, Jason called in sick, citing a migraine. Emily kissed his forehead, her touch warm but distant. "Feel better, okay?" she said, grabbing her bag. He nodded, waiting until her car pulled away before grabbing his keys. He drove to Bean and Brew, parking across the street, his pulse pounding. The shop was busy, baristas calling out orders, but there she was, Emily, at a corner table, laughing with Michael. They leaned close, their hands inches apart, the familiarity between them undeniable. Jason's vision blurred with anger, but he stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel. He wouldn't storm in. He needed proof, not a scene. He spent the day piecing things together. At home, he checked Emily's laptop, finding an old email from a high school reunion group. Michael's name was on the thread, confirming they'd been in touch years ago. The puzzle was coming together, and it wasn't pretty. That night, Emily came home, her smile bright as she chatted about her day. Jason played along, but his questions were pointed. "How's that coffee shop you like? Bean and Brew, right?" Her smile faltered just for a second. "Oh yeah, it's great. Stop by today." She didn't mention Michael. The lie stung, but Jason kept his cool, his architect's mind building a case. The next day, he arranged to meet Michael after work at a quiet bar near Pike Place Market. The dim lights and low hum of conversation felt like the perfect backdrop for what was coming. Michael arrived, all easy charm, but Jason didn't waste time. "I know you and Emily were together in high school," he said, his voice low and steady. Michael's grin vanished, his face paling. "What? Who told you that?" he stammered. Jason leaned forward, his eyes locked on Michael's. "I saw a photo, and I know you've been meeting her. Coffee yesterday, right? Bean and Brew." Michael's hands fidgeted, his composure crumbling. Look, man, it's not what you think. We just reconnected. Old friends catching up. Jason's voice was ice. Old friends don't lie about knowing each other. What happened, Michael? Did you sleep with my wife? Michael's silence was deafening, his eyes dropping to the table. After a long pause, he muttered, "It was a mistake. Just once, after we ran into each other. The past, it just came back." The words hit Jason like a punch, his world splintering. He wanted to scream, to flip the table, but he held himself together, his voice barely above a whisper. "You betrayed me. Both of you." He stood, leaving Michael staring at his untouched beer. Driving home, Jason's mind was a storm. He'd trusted Emily, built a life with her, and now it felt like a house of cards collapsing. But he wasn't done. He needed to hear it from her, to see if she'd lie again or finally tell the truth. The confrontation was coming, and with it, the end of everything he thought he knew. Jason's drive home from the bar felt endless, the Seattle rain streaking across his windshield like tears he refused to shed. Michael's confession, it was a mistake, just once, echoed in his head, each word a shard of glass in his chest. He'd built a life with Emily, trusted her completely, and now the foundation was crumbling. But anger, though burning hot, didn't cloud his judgment. Jason was an architect. He designed solutions, not chaos. He wouldn't lash out or let emotion dictate his next move. If Emily and Michael thought they could hide their betrayal, they were wrong. He'd expose the truth, but he'd do it his way, calm, deliberate, and within the bounds of reason. Pulling into the driveway, Jason sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. The house glowed warmly through the windows, Emily's silhouette moving in the kitchen. For a moment, he could almost pretend nothing had changed. But the image of her laughing with Michael at Bean and Brew, their hands nearly touching, shattered that illusion. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and walked inside. Emily looked up from chopping vegetables, her smile soft but guarded. "Hey, you're home early," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "Everything okay?" Jason didn't answer right away. He set his keys down, his movements deliberate, and leaned against the counter, studying her. Her hazel eyes, usually so open, seemed to hide something now, a secret she thought was safe. "I talked to Michael," he said, his voice low and even. Emily's hands froze, the knife hovering over a carrot. "Oh," she said, her tone too casual. "About work?" Jason's gaze didn't waver. "No, about you. About high school. About the coffee dates you didn't tell me about." Her face paled, the knife clattering to the counter. "Jason, don't," he cut in, his voice sharp but controlled. "Don't lie again. I know you were together in high school. I know you've been meeting him. And I know it wasn't just coffee." Emily's eyes widened, her breath catching. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. For the first time, Jason saw her not as his wife, but as a stranger, someone capable of breaking his trust. "Did you sleep with him?" he asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Emily shook her head, tears welling. "No, I swear it wasn't like that. We talked, caught up. It was stupid, I know, but it meant nothing." Jason's jaw tightened. "Michael says otherwise. He says it happened. Once, after you reconnected." Emily's hands flew to her face, a sob escaping. "It was a mistake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It was one moment, Jason. I was confused, caught up in old memories. I never meant to hurt you." Her words were a plea, but they only deepened the wound. Jason felt the air grow thick, his chest tight with betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why lie?" Emily's tears fell freely now, but she had no answer, only apologies that fell hollow. He turned away, unable to look at her. His mind raced, not with rage, but with clarity. He wouldn't let this destroy him. He'd handle it like he handled every challenge, methodically. "I need you to leave," he said, his voice steady. Emily gasped, stepping toward him. "Jason, please, we can fix this. I love you." But he shook his head, resolute. "You broke us. I need space. Pack a bag." Her sobs filled the room as she pleaded, but Jason was unmoved. He walked to the bedroom, pulling a suitcase from the closet, and began packing her clothes with mechanical precision. Emily followed, begging him to stop, but he didn't. When the suitcase was full, he set it by the door. "You can stay with your sister tonight," he said, his tone final. But Jason wasn't done. He knew Michael's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional. They worked together, their desks feet apart, their projects intertwined. The thought of seeing him every day was unbearable. So, he turned his focus to Michael's wife, Sarah. She deserved to know the truth. The next morning, Jason called her, his voice calm but firm. "Sarah, can we meet? It's important." She agreed, sensing the weight in his tone. They met at a quiet cafe near her hospital, the clink of cups a stark contrast to the conversation ahead. Sarah sat across from him, her nurse's scrubs slightly wrinkled, her eyes curious but wary. Jason didn't sugarcoat it. Michael and Emily had an affair. They were together in high school, reconnected recently, and it went too far. "I have proof, texts, a photo from years ago." He slid his phone across the table, showing the high school picture of Emily and Michael, followed by screenshots of their coffee date texts. Sarah's face hardened, her fingers trembling as she scrolled. "He told me it was just work," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I trusted him." Jason nodded, his own pain mirrored in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I thought you should know." Sarah didn't cry. She handed the phone back, her jaw set. "Thank you, Jason. I'll handle this." He saw the resolve in her, the same determination he felt. Back at the office, Jason took one more step. He scheduled a meeting with HR, presenting the situation as a conflict of interest. "Michael's actions have compromised our ability to work together," he said, keeping his tone professional. He shared only what was necessary, avoiding personal details but emphasizing the breach of trust. The HR manager listened, her expression neutral but sympathetic. "We'll look into it," she promised. That night, alone in the house, Jason sat in the dark, a glass of whiskey untouched on the table. Emily had texted, begging to talk, but he didn't respond. The silence was heavy, but it gave him clarity. He'd exposed the truth, not with fists or shouting, but with precision. Michael and Emily would face the consequences, and he'd rebuild, piece by piece, just as he designed his buildings, stronger, wiser, and unyielding. The days following Jason's confrontation with Emily and his meeting with Sarah felt like navigating a house after an earthquake. Familiar walls stood, but cracks ran deep, and nothing felt safe. The Seattle rain, relentless as ever, mirrored the weight in Jason's chest. He moved through his routine with mechanical precision, sketching blueprints at work, grabbing coffee at his usual spot, but the world had lost its color. Emily's suitcase was gone, her absence a gaping hole in their home. Her text had stopped after the first night, replaced by a silence that was both a relief and a wound. Jason didn't know where she was staying, her sisters, maybe, and he didn't ask. He needed the space to process, to rebuild. At the office, Michael's desk remained empty. Whispers circulated among colleagues, hushed conversations about his sudden leave. Jason kept his head down, focusing on his projects, but the HR meeting had set things in motion. By the end of the week, the news broke. Michael had been let go. The official reason was vague, conduct unbecoming, but Jason knew his complaint had tipped the scales. He felt no satisfaction, only a hollow sense of justice. Michael's absence didn't erase the betrayal. It just made the office feel like a ghost town, haunted by what could have been. Sarah, meanwhile, moved swiftly. Jason learned through a mutual friend that she'd filed for divorce, her decision unwavering after seeing the proof of Michael's affair. She'd packed her things and moved to a small apartment near her hospital, cutting contact with Michael. Jason admired her resolve, the way she'd taken control without hesitation. He'd met her once more, briefly, to return a scarf she'd left at the cafe. Her eyes were tired but fierce. "I'm done letting people lie to me," she said, her voice steady. "Thanks for giving me the truth." Jason nodded, understanding her pain too well. They parted ways, two strangers bound by a shared wound, both determined to move forward. Emily tried to reach out one last time, a voicemail left late at night. "Jason, I know I messed up." Her voice trembled, raw with regret. "It was a mistake, a stupid moment. I love you. Please, let's talk." He listened to it once, then deleted it. Her words felt like echoes of a life that no longer existed. He didn't hate her. He wasn't sure he could, but trust, once shattered, couldn't be glued back together. He blocked her number, not out of spite, but to protect himself. He needed to let go, to find solid ground again. Weeks turned into months, and Jason rebuilt his life, piece by careful piece. He threw himself into his work, landing a lead role on a major project designing a sustainable community center. The challenge grounded him, each blueprint a step toward something new. He started hiking again, the Cascades offering solitude and clarity. On one trail, he met a group of local architects, their conversations about design and innovation sparking a new sense of connection. They invited him to a jazz club, and for the first time in months, he laughed without forcing it. The music filling a void he hadn't realized was so deep. Emily, he heard, had moved to Portland, taking a job at a small design firm. Mutual friends said she was trying to start over, haunted by her mistake. She didn't try to contact him again, and Jason was grateful. Michael, too, had faded from the scene. Rumor had it he'd taken a job in another state, his reputation tarnished, his marriage over. There was no reconciliation between him and Emily, no dramatic reunion. Their affair, born of nostalgia, had burned out as quickly as it ignited, leaving only ashes. Jason found peace in the small moments, a sunrise over Puget Sound, a well-crafted building rising from his designs, a quiet beer with new friends. He'd always trusted his intuition, and it had failed him with Emily and Michael, but it also led him here, to a life he was building on his own terms. The betrayal had scarred him, but hadn't broken him. He'd exposed the truth, not with violence or vengeance, but with clarity and resolve. Emily and Michael faced their consequences, lost relationships, lost trust, lives upended by their choices. Justice, in its quiet way, had prevailed. One evening, as he stood on his balcony overlooking the city, Jason felt a shift. The rain had stopped, and the skyline glowed under a rare, clear sky. He thought of Sarah starting fresh, and of himself finding his footing. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it no longer defined him. He was free, not from the past, but from its hold. He'd learned to trust again, not blindly, but with eyes wide open. The future was uncertain, but it was his to shape, one careful line at a time. For those who faced betrayal, Jason's story is a reminder. The truth, though painful, sets you free. If you're grappling with doubts, check out our guide in the comments for tips on finding clarity without losing yourself. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories of resilience and redemption.